It's been 20 years since Big Finish first released the Sirens of Time. 1999. On this channel, we speak about Big Finish a lot. Well, certainly I do. It's one of my passions, and I've been collecting for a few years now, and it's really something special to me. So I thought it would be wrong of me not to review the release that celebrates 20 years of Big Finish. So sit back, relax, and enjoy me reviewing this gigantic, beefy, absolute unit of a boy, The Legacy of Time. God, that was so cringy, just roll the title. Legacy of Time was released this month. I don't know what else to say. I might as well just get on to reviewing each individual story, as there's 6 of them, so yeah. So Lies in Ruins is the first of the 6 stories. It starts off with Professor River's song on an archaeological expedition on this planet, which popped up out of nowhere. They open a tomb, and in it they find another person, Professor Bernie Summerfield, who for those who aren't aware, she's an archaeologist from the future who travelled with the Doctor in the Virgin New Adventures, and she has her own Big Finish spin-off, which has been going on since before their Doctor Who stuff. Judging from that description, you're probably thinking one of 2 things. Stephen Moffat is a plagiarist! Or, this makes sense to do with the 20th anniversary of Big Finish, obtaining the rights to the Doctor Who license, as they do have the rights to everything in this. I personally think the former. The 8th Doctor arrives and surprisingly doesn't have amnesia, although he does seem to briefly forget who Benny is. He has a new companion in the form of Rhea, who the professors don't get on with, not out of jealousy, but because Rhea is very simple and annoying. But that's the point, so don't worry about it. There is not much for me to say beyond this point that isn't spoilery, however I won't give a spoiler warning and timecode until they get big enough for me to consider them really bad. As without the ones I'm about to say, you won't get what the plot is. The professors find out that they're on the ruins of Gallifrey, and then the Doctor finds out, and he has a mental breakdown. Yeah, that's basically what the plot is, the Doctor coming to terms with this outcome of the Time War, which is still going on as they speak. Also, a bunch of scavengers want to blow up the planet, so they can filter through the remains, as mining to get the minerals is a lot more effort. Now you have the time skip to when I'm talking about what I like and dislike about the story without spoiling it. Right, so I'm gonna spoil things because, you know, you've had your chance. So basically the quartet discover the Matrix, and Rhea actually harnesses it and gives that power to the Doctor because he is the best person ever and he deserves to be Space Jesus. I know how much fans like myself hate the Space Jesus trope in Doctor Who, but I feel like it's justified here for 2 reasons. 1, Rhea's dialogue is parody of how companions view the Doctor, as she literally calls him the god of this world. 2, this is a subversion of the trope, because instead of using this power for a good reason, he uses it for revenge. He essentially lashes out against the scavengers by making them a barrier around the planet that reflects their fire back at them, which will kill them eventually. Yeah, the Doctor's having a runaway bride moment. River literally slaps him out of it, and he realises what he's doing is wrong. Also, they figure out that it's actually a broken TARDIS with a dodgy chameleon circuit, not Gallifrey, as well as Rhea being a robot the Doctor made because the war was getting to him. See? Everything makes sense. Overall, this is a great start to The Legacy of Time, with a great performance from Paul McGann, who is really selling the Doctor's struggles from being in the Time War. The dynamic between Lisa Bowerman's Benny and Alex Kingston's River is beautiful, as they are similar characters in concept, different in execution, and they bicker a lot, which is sort of the dynamic you look for in a crossover. The rest of the cast did well bringing James Goss's script to life. My only issues are some parts were a little jarring, Benny being in the tomb without any explanation as to how she's there, although why she's there makes perfect sense. Also, it didn't feel right that the Doctor forgot Benny, or at least for it to be made clearer that it's because of the Time War. The thing that knocks us from an 8 to a 7 out of 10 is that It's just a bit too slow for my liking. However, this is still enjoyable nonetheless, and it's worth no less than a 7. Next is the Split Infinitive, and it's good. That's all really. I mean, it just feels like a run-of-the-mill Doctor Who story executed decently enough that I'd give it a 7. I do like the premise. A victim of a time experiment gone wrong being used by a criminal gang to bend time, resulting in their victims, while they exist in the 1960s, to be aged to death prematurely, and the victims that they killed while operating in the 1970s don't exist, because the reverse happened. So the 7th Doctor recruits countermeasures to help out in both time zones. Ace is helping them out and getting them to speed in the 60s, while the Doctor guides them in the 70s. John Dorney uses the rules of temporal relativity that have been established in Doctor Who elsewhere to his advantage here. Time hasn't been written yet, so 70s countermeasures, they don't know what's happening. And we don't know whether 60s Gilmore specifically will survive in certain situations, which stresses 70s Gilmore out. Other nice touches are with the whole concept of relativity are that some members of the team, specifically Gilmore, but not exclusively him, they say things in like the 70s, but we hear them say it again in the 60s. Also, the Doctor's trying to figure out how Ace is getting on just by asking the 70s countermeasures team what happened in the 60s also makes sense. There's not much to speak about spoiler-wise, but it's not nothing, so here's your warning. Right, so the Rocket Men are the criminal gang. I mean, we should have seen it coming. Other than the 11 and the Eminence, they are Big Finish's most famous original monsters in my opinion. No, the Alex McQueen Master doesn't count. And John Dorney is the creator of the Rocket Men, and has written almost all of their stories, so no surprise there. It was kind of cool hearing them again. I also like how the person split in time basically explained the unit dating controversy. If you don't know what that is, I won't get into it here because that's a video all on its own. If you want any of us to cover it, please mention in the comments. But for those who do know, they solved it by basically saying, oh, this time wave ripple that has happened because of this explosion in time basically made it so that a certain someone may retire in the 70s even though they worked in the 80s. Dorney didn't need to do this, but it's a nice touch that added to the script. All in all, I did enjoy the story. The Doctor, Ace and countermeasures were all good, the cast did good, the writer did good, everything was good. This wasn't enough to make me want to buy the countermeasures series that Big Finish have. It's just like their episodes in Worlds of Doctor Who. I liked them, it was a good episode, but it wasn't enough to make me want more. Although their presence was justified in the script, so that's fair enough. So, as I said, I'll give this a 7 out of 10. Right, up next we have The Sacrifice of Jo Grant, and I really like it. Kate Stewart enlists Jo Jones and Osgood to help to stop some portals that have been popping up everywhere and every when. Jo is also linked to these, as Alison Williams from Countermeasures was an eyewitness to Jo's sacrifice of her life in the early days at UNIT. Jo and Kate accidentally end up going through one of these holes back to a few hours before the incident and meet the third Doctor, who doesn't realise Jo's 40 years older. They all work on trying to close the holes. So that's the basic plot. Time for spoilers! A dinosaur proceeds to cause the dead to rise in the modern day, and Kate accidentally messes things up when a voice disguising itself as Osgood tells her to muck about with the equipment, causing the Doctor and Jo's reunion to be cut short, as Jo realises it's her destiny to sacrifice herself. Luckily everything's alright because the Doctor was naughty and a Deus Ex Machina took Jo out of the afterlife. The character work in the story is great. Guy Adams nailed how Jo would react to seeing her Doctor 40 years later, as well as Kate's trepidations of calling her dad. 3 was good as per usual. I'm not really a big third Doctor fan myself. I like him, but I don't love him. So yeah, but Big Finish managed to capture the third Doctor pretty well with Tim Treloar. I mean, to be honest, there isn't much more for me to say about this story. Even rounding up the story would start to get repetitive, as I would say, oh, the cast was brilliant, the writing was really good, everything was really good, the direction, So from now on, if I don't say any of that stuff, and I don't say anything else, assume I'm meaning that stuff. 8 out of 10. Next is Relative Time, and it has nothing to do with relativity, but it has everything to do with relatives, cause Jenny meets the Fifth Doctor. For those who forgot, Jenny was the Doctor's daughter from the Doctor's daughter, and she's meeting the Fifth Doctor, which is obvious because, you know, Peter Davison and Georgia Tennant both work for Big Finish, playing the characters they played on TV, and are also a father and daughter in real life. So Jenny hijacked a time-travelling tourism ship which is running away from an explosion in the vortex. Also, Vortisaurs are attacking! And the Nine is stealing things, because he's the Nine, he's a kleptomaniac. The Doctor and Jenny have to stop this, because it'll destroy the Earth and everyone will die. There's nothing much to this one. There isn't really anything to spoil other than a twist ending that was only there to pad out the runtime. That being said, just because the story didn't break new ground and literally just added stuff to pad out the runtime, doesn't mean it didn't do this stuff well, as everyone was superb in their own roles. The Nine, especially as played by John Heffernan. Despite feeling unnecessary to the plot, he was like the best thing about this story. Jenny is the opposite, however, as she's very important to the plot, but she's very annoying. It's almost like she's a 10th Doctor clone. Oh. Yeah, that is not a good metaphor, because that is actually quite literally what is the case. This is no fault of Georgia, however, as I feel like even though the part does play to her strengths, it's not exactly written in a way that I like, because I just don't really like Jenny as a character. I do like the fact that she is capable, and knew what to do in certain situations, so at least she is a character that can do things on her own, which would make sense, and it does show that she isn't just an annoying little brat companion, she is capable of doing things herself, and that makes sense. The Doctor was great as always. 5 on Big Finish is actually one of my favourite Doctors. I would say, if we're looking at exclusively Big Finish, he's like in my top 5. It was nice hearing him again. Overall, the story is really good, and it's nice hearing the Vortisaurs again. 7 out of 10. Okay, the next one is The Avenues of Possibility, and this is probably my favourite one of the box set. Detective Inspector Patricia Menzies has appeared in many Sixth Doctor audios, and she is questioning a man who's demanding to see the Doctor. His name is Henry Fielding, and yes, he's the guy who invented the police, apparently. Him and his brother were transported out of time, and he knows it because he knows the Doctor, and this certainly ain't the London he knows. The Doctor and Charlie try to find Fielding, just to spend the day with him, only to discover he's gone, and for the Doctor to be kidnapped by an alternate history 1950s military. So due to the complex nature of the story, yeah, there's gonna be quite a few spoilers. So it turns out this alternate history is a bootstrap paradox. This is the type of paradox explained in Before the Flood for those wondering. However, the leader of this band of military have masters who want to mess up time. Yep, it's the Sirens of Time. Yep, they're back, and they're the main villain of this box set. Yep, the Sirens are back, and they want to destroy time by attacking these fractures that have been popping up around the 18th century London like a bullet hole through glass. Charlie's the one to come up with the idea to stop them, which I find great, as it's within her character to be capable of thinking how to save the day, and it also makes sense so that the Sirens be drawn to her, as her existence is actually a paradox. Due to the 8th Doctor saving her from the R101, and it's even more paradoxical as she travelled with 8, but is currently with 6. And as a fan of the 8th Doctor and Charlie stories, it's great hearing all the references. Even Edward Grove is alive. Although this does mean the 6th Doctor has to sacrifice himself, because it would be an even bigger paradox for all these adventures to not happen, and here's a way to defeat the Sirens. Instead of them eating up all these paradoxes, give them more paradox, and then they'll be overblown and just, yeah. I mean, it's kind of confusing if you think about it, but it's called The Legacy of Time. Of course they're gonna do stuff with time, and it's gonna be a bit messy. I prefer this to The Sacrifice of Joe Grant, because I felt that this story was structured extremely well, and the characters are also very good, because I look for a good story first, then good characters. Both worked very well in this story, so I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Probably would have been a 10 out of 10 if Jago and Lightfoot were in it as originally intended. Finally, we have Collision Course, which is probably the most fanfiction-y Big Finish thing ever. It's glorious. It's honestly glorious. So we start on Gallifrey with Romana and Leela realizing time is falling apart. They're gaining new memories of travelling to the planet Henlon with the Doctor. The planet was very different in both of their accounts, so they try to remember some more. And spoiler time, because it's the finale. What do you expect? So, the planet is where the first ever TARDIS test flight happened. And the Sirens are trying to stop this. And they do succeed, to be fair. 4, Leela, other 4, and Romana all die. So, Romana and Leela, as seen on Gallifrey, travel to Henlon and try to fix this. Luckily, the Sirens are killed after their warning, but it's too late. The paradox has just been replaced by another paradox. Instead of failing the test flight, it never happened to begin with. Also, the Sirens escaped despite not having access to paradoxical energy by the potential energy of the paradox that would be created from the Time Lords never happening, and that was such a great paradox that the potential of that paradox made them become free. So yeah, the universe is screwed and Romana needs 6 pilots. A TARDIS pops up, and Benny walks out, being annoyed that she had to do this favour, and then 6 pops out. But he's not the only one there, because then 4 is there too. And then 7 steps out. Then 8. Then 3 and 5. So they're ready to do it. But because like so many Doctors just wanted to help out, another TARDIS appears. Leela and Benny walk in, and they see it's the 10th Doctor, as played by David Tennant himself, with the first Doctor as played by David Bradley, and the second Doctor played by Fraser Hines. And yes, 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 dream come true. The 10th Doctor just shouted, Leela! Benny! And it's just like, it makes everything feel connected, and I love it. So they do sort of help in the end. And then they all fly in the TARDIS and save the day, and then they all go back to their own times, and the Sirens pine to the Temperon about failing, but there is another chance. Yeah, there's a reason why I've said it is one of the most fanfiction-y things Big Finish have ever put out, but it is amazing. Seriously, it's nice hearing all the Doctors bounce off each other, and especially 1 and 10. I feel a fan wank is earned, because this is an anniversary release. So it makes sense. Essentially having 9 Doctors in one room piloting the first ever TARDIS made me giddy, because yeah, of course it would. I do feel like it makes sense if you're going to do a sequel to the Sirens of Time, you might as well do something to do with Gallifrey and make it so massive scale. And it's kind of funny how like Guy Adams basically forced the whole first TARDIS test pilot thing to have enough pilots so that each of the Doctors from this beefy boy was able to be able to be one of the pilots. I mean, the other 3 Doctors are there because Big Finish are asserting their dominance over the Doctor Who canon. I did actually like the plot as well. 2 alternate versions of history with the same Doctor and different companions, it does work, and it also makes sense to make this also a Gallifrey story. But overall, Collision Course was very enjoyable, so I will give it an 8 out of 10. So that's Legacy of Time. The set isn't phenomenal, but it's still really good and definitely worth a purchase. By the time I release this, there'll probably be like 2 copies left or something, if that. So yeah, you're probably only going to be able to get this download. Each episode has something very fan-wanky in it, but as I said, it makes sense, it's justified. There's not much else for me to say about the set, so I give Doctor Who: The Legacy of Time a 7.5 out of 10. So that's it. That's Legacy of Time. That was Big Finish's 20th anniversary release. Congratulations, Big Finish, on 20 years, and I wish you a further 20 years of brilliant stories. And thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video if you like it and you think other people may like it. Remember, always check the description. I feel like this is going to be a time where I'm going to say thank you to Isaac-Heeks from Embersfield Films for making the title sequence, and Marshall Tankersley, aka Soundsmyth Productions, I'm thanking you for making the theme of the Whoniversals, and just, yeah, thank Big Finish for giving me a hobby of making videos about them and also collecting, because I just find enjoyment in all of this. Just remember to click links in the description if you want to follow us on Twitter or Facebook, follow each individual member of the Whoniversals on Twitter, or go to the links that Isaac and Marshall have asked for us to provide for us crediting them in every single video description. Thank you, Big Finish, and thank you all for watching. I shall see you in my next video, whenever that will be. Goodbye.